Welcome to the Sendcast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Sendcast and the managing director of B Squared. Every week on the Sendcast, we talk about a different topic within the world of Send to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals working in schools, to empower parents and to raise awareness. And this week I was joined by Charlotte MacDougall, the founder of Nurture and Thrive. And we discussed how we need to rethink well-being of neurodivergent children in school. The Sendcast is powered by B Squared, and we help to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. And we help schools to do this for a wide range of abilities and ages. We have a range of frameworks to suit students from birth all the way through to 25. And we don't just cover academic progress. We have frameworks for SEMH, executive function, personal development, communication and interaction, and many more. And our software shows progress in a variety of ways, so no matter how small the progress or how spiky, we can capture and visualize that progress. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software. But now, let's get on with that podcast. My guest this week is Charlotte MacDougall. Charlotte is a neurodivergent specialist, education consultant, former school leader, and founder of Nurture and Thrive. She combines professional expertise with her lived experience as a neurodivergent parent, and she works with parents and schools to better understand and support neurodivergent children. Charlotte is also the author of Reclaiming the Narrative and Thriving with SEND, and has written for the TES. Welcome to the show, Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Dale. It's great to be here.
You are very, very welcome. Now, well-being is a big topic in schools, but it does have the same problem, I feel, as supporting mental health, that when everything is calm, we talk about well-being and we talk about mental health. But when things go wrong, mental health and well-being are completely forgotten. They don't link the situation to someone's low well-being, and therefore support is not offered.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think there is a recognition of this in education because well-being seems to be, at the forefront of inspection frameworks. There's always policy documents around it. There tends to be some sort of well-being lead in most schools, school counsellors, sensory rooms. But I think the irony here is that well-being has become so much of an issue because the education system itself is really difficult and stressful to navigate for a lot of children, particularly neurodivergent children. And many of the strategies that come to the fore when we are sort of addressing well-being tend to be well-meaning sticking plasters, effectively. They will, encourage someone to use the sensory room for half an hour, but forget that part of the reason that a child is dysregulated is because of the stress that's induced by this very high stakes, outcome-driven education system.
Sorry, when you said it was like putting sticking plasters, I'm envisioning Monty Python. It is but a scratch. But it is that well-being, we have well-being leads, we have mental health leads, we have all this stuff, it's in the effort inspection frameworks, but for me, the biggest indicator of well-being is attendance.
Exactly, but I think there is this issue of... that's part of the issue in that, we look at attendance, and if attendance is good, then there's nothing to worry about. And the fact that we are really struggling with attendance now in school, increasingly struggling with attendance, more and more children are moving to a home education model. That suggests that there is an issue with well-being, but actually there is a significant minority of children who can still attend school, they can still achieve very highly, but the cost that they pay in order to keep turning up, keep jumping through all the academic hoops, is absolutely huge. You know, this is why we hear so often from parents that children go home and are very, very difficult to live with, have real struggles when they get home because, you know, the mask drops. They can't sustain this level of hypervigilance consistently. So they will put all of that effort into getting through the school day, then it falls apart at home very often. So there are two sides to this. Yes, there's the attendance issue that makes it very clear that there's a serious problem with some children's well-being, but there's also this issue of children who are just pushing through and coping, and coping is not the same as well-being.
No, there's that attending, being in school, which is very much thing my mum forced me to do. She was a teacher. You go to school no matter what. And I used to get the 100% attendance, but I wasn't really there some of those days. I wasn't really, which meant actually, rather than being one day of maybe being ill, it was like a whole week of just feeling absolute rubbish. And again, it gives the message of, do I matter or does that number matter?
Yeah.
You have that. But it's, and you talk about that kind of the exploding when they get home and then masking at school and things like that. And with my children is towards the end of the term, it would get worse. And I've heard lots of people talk about, the reason they're getting worse is it's the end of term and they're going into a week where there's no structure. And therefore it's kind of like that's the parents' fault. They're really bad this week because they're not going to have any structure and they can't cope with that. Whereas there are going to be children where that is the case.
Yeah.
There are obviously those children on the last few days where lessons are gone really struggle. But for my daughters, it's very much of, I have run out of energy. I need a break from masking every day.
And I've seen exactly the same with my son. It does tend to be the end of term where he will really start to struggle. And I do think that there is something to be said for this lack of structure not helping with that at all. But his battery is empty and he's experienced autistic burnout, you know, as an 11-year-old. And it's definitely the case that he just has no more to give. So, you know, I think sometimes there's this conversation about school holidays being shorter. But, you know, these children really need this break because the term time experience is just so intense for them. And there is all of this energy going on to something that's effectively invisible, to trying to keep some kind of equilibrium in this very busy brain that they have. And if teachers don't understand the experience that these neurodivergent young people are going through, then it's going to be very difficult for them to support in an empathetic way. And one of the things that I do on my inset trainings is to use these sort of simulation videos. There's a fantastic one on the Autism Society website, and it just gives you a flavour of what it is like to live as an autistic person for 60 seconds. But then if you multiply that, you know, but all day, every day, constantly having to process this excess of sensory information is completely exhausting. Let alone having to put on this mask where you comply and you perform in the way that you're expected to. And until there's that level of awareness around the amount of energy it takes, it's going to be really difficult for schools to support in any meaningful way that goes beyond these sticking plasters.
Definitely. And even now as an adult, there are days where, and Saturday was one, where my daughter is doing a work experience thing up in London, which I'm so proud of. But to help her with her certainty, it meant we had to go do a test run. So Saturday was test run day. So we went up on the train to London and we literally went to the location she's going to go. So she could see what they looked like. She took photos so she knew where she was going to go. Problem is, it was a hot day. I was already drained before I even got to the day. We're going in the underground lots in 28 degree and 29 degree London.
Yeah.
It's a noisy environment. We're going to brand new places for both of us, which means you take it in, and there's that whole thing when you're somewhere you're familiar with, you're only seeing 15%. The rest is filled in from memory. So therefore, when you're familiar, there's a lot less drain. So it was somewhere new. So I knew I was going to get a headache. I drank lots. I had all the stuff I did. And yeah, sure enough, on the way home, which even when I was up there, the headache started kicking in, and I managed to not have a migraine, just. And that's the thing is, you talked about those children who just suck it up and get on with it. And that's the thing is, I knew that day it was going to make me ill. But I did it for my daughter.
Yeah.
I did it. I knew the cost. I accepted the cost. There are lots of children doing it, not through choice, but because they're made to.
Yeah.
And they're following these rules that in theory should look after them and protect them. And it doesn't always. And then that moment where it is too much. Now, as an adult, I knew what I was going to do. I knew the probable outcome. Me and my daughter both took headphones, so on the way home we didn't have to talk to each other. We could just go and relax. And we didn't have that conversation. I knew that's what she does, so I took my headphones. So we have those little strategies. Yeah. As a young person learning all of this, how do you know what you need? How do you know any of this? So you will get it wrong, and you will have an outburst, or something will go wrong, or you won't want to do something. And then you're just naughty.
Yeah, you're just naughty, you're difficult, you are judged on what people can see, this visible behaviour. But it's like the iceberg, isn't it? Where you can just see what's at the top, and you can't see this tremendous amount of invisible stress that's going on underneath. And that makes it really, really difficult. And I think that's why it's so important that young people do understand how their brain works. That, I know that some people can be really uncomfortable with labels. Parents don't want to attach labels to their children. Some teachers, I have even heard teachers say, I don't see the point in attaching a label to yourself. It's not going to change anything anyway. What matters is that that individual understands themselves, so that when they are starting to feel overwhelmed in an environment, they understand that there's a reason for that. They can start to attach language to their experience so that they understand their experience. And then once they understand what might be very challenging from a sensory point of view, for example, or an attention point of view, then they can start to formulate strategies that work for them, not necessarily what school has told them they need, but if it's headphones, so that they can just completely close down and exhale, like you say, for a while, and that's what works for them, then that's wonderful. And it takes a bit of trial and error. My eldest, he needs quite a lot of proprioceptive input, so he loves smashing the tackle bag. He has weighty blankets and things, but we only got to that point with him post diagnosis. So once he got his autism diagnosis, and we started exploring some of the strategies that were going to support him. So I just think it's so important that children understand their neurotype, free of any stigma, so that they can develop a confident neurodivergent identity where they understand what they need, because then they're not trying to be something else all the time. And they can lean into what are actually really can be fantastic neurodivergent strengths. But it just takes a little bit of time to get there. But the first hurdle in that journey is letting go of concerns around labels, because I think they can be incredibly empowering.
Now, the labels bit does wind me up. And again, the idea that labels do access support currently. Labels do enable that. Labels make you more visible in certain places. And I've seen people say there's no point in getting a label because, but generally it's that external part. For me, getting my diagnosis was it's not my fault.
Exactly.
Same with my daughter. It's her, basically, she's not broken, she's not failing, she's just different.
Yeah.
And so many of her friends use the phrase, but you don't look autistic. And she's like, I know they mean well, but when youngsters are using that phrase, it's because of what the society is teaching what autism is. And yes, my daughter does not wear ear defenders. She doesn't sit there carrying all the stuff you kind of see when someone's trying to help you see what autism is by finding the most extreme version of it. My daughter is not that. And they look at her going, and they say, I'll go for my autism diagnosis. They went, how funny. I went, no, I'm autistic. They're like, and what they're saying is, but you're normal.
And I've been told that, but you're normal, Charlotte.
And that's the thing is, and on one hand, that's sad and great to hear. It's a real thing. And I do have conversation about how much my daughter masks, but for me, that label is an internal thing. That label is for me. Yeah. It's for any situation I get in, and I'm struggling, but others aren't. Oh, it's probably an autism thing. But it then means, okay, so what strategies can I use? It's kind of like, it's like a book. As you said, you start exploring those strategies once you had the diagnosis. And I think when my daughter realised she's struggling, she'll use her strategies.
Her strategies, yeah, exactly.
But when everything's fine, then she doesn't need anything and she'll just go along fine. But the moment it's not fine, she has her strategies. Yeah. And I think it is the fact it's got a label to her means so much that it's not that she's struggling.
No.
And it is, there's so many things she does really well in some areas, she struggles in others. I still have to learn, every so often I will say 1:15 and I go 8:15.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't get 1/4 what on a digital clock makes no sense.
Yeah, fair point.
So there are certain things that I'm going, you're getting an A-star psychology A-level, but you can't understand the term 8:15. Just accept it and move on.
Exactly. There's bigger things to worry about, and there are more interesting things that her brain is going to be able to access and harness and explain to other people. So we need to let go of those little issues. And I think particularly if you're autistic, social cues is another one. We just need to let go of these expectations around normal and eye contact and shaking hands and things. I mean, Pete Warmby puts it brilliantly in saying, autistic people don't struggle with communication skills. They just have autistic communication skills. And they might be, they might be blunt, they might not be. They might struggle with eye contact, they might not. But, we need to get away from this whole idea of what normal is. And I think I'd do a whole chapter in my book about, dispelling this myth of normal. Because, what is that? Who decides that? And why are we putting ourselves through so much angst and friction and difficulty to kind of live up to this model of normal? And that's just a whole life question, let alone, what's normal in education. And
normal is different in different places. Yeah. So my daughter goes to college and she gets the train, and where she goes, people seem to smile at each other. Mm-hmm. So she's learned you smile at people and they smile back and life is happy. Yeah. So she's taken that rule to so many other places and everyone's miserable. So what's normal in a town, in one place. Then she goes somewhere else. It's not normal. No one smiles back. Everyone's grumpy. She goes somewhere else. People do smile. I don't know what makes people in an area smile. I don't know if it's to do with the size of the town, what's going on in that town. I do not know, but somehow this is normal. And it's like, there is the normal. There are no written rules. There are no 2 + 2 = 4. No. It depends on so many factors, and that's normal.
Yeah.
I'm air quoting.
I think one of my biggest issues with normal in education, apart from exams that I'll put to one side for a moment, is this mindset, and we hear it from politicians all the time, that students need to be more gritty, more resilient, and we expect you to pull your socks up and get on with things. We need a grittier mindset, and I don't want that normalised for my children or any of the children I work with. We need and I've written about this before, this balance between grit and grace, where sometimes you do need, and it's like you were saying earlier about, I knew that this was going to exhaust me, and I made that sacrifice, or I accepted that knowingly, and that I would pay the price later on. Sometimes we have to do that, and we make a choice. But we have to balance it with grace, where we understand ourselves and our needs, and we give ourselves that kind of nourishment, or in order to be able to sustain the gritty behaviour. We cannot just be constantly pushing through and coping and encouraging grit if we don't balance it with grace. And this is something that the education system and politicians just don't seem to understand at all.
I would say that any person masking has grit.
Absolutely.
That's the thing, is they talk about this grit, and I agree with, we need this grit, we need this resilience. We do. I will help my daughter in the best ways I can, but sometimes what she needs goes against what I need, and I can't provide that, and she's got to suck it up.
Yeah.
In the same way, I chose to suck it up on Saturday, and I was going to get a migraine to help my daughter out. When you're in a good place, you can do that.
Yeah.
But where I got that headache on Saturday, there are children who are going through that experience every single day. That is grit. That is that child just soaking it all up and then getting through the day. That is grit. When for this one child, it's like if I went for a run with Mo Farah.
Oh, good luck.
And at the end of it, literally would be on a stretcher. Mo Farah's going, that's quite gentle. And then someone going up, you need more grit. And he's when you're going, you know what, I probably could have run that faster. And that grit assumes that everyone is just trundling along quite happily in that school. Not that there are children who are being absolutely resilient to the max already, being told, you need to have some grit. It's like, yeah, I can do the grit thing. I can put up with stuff when I know maybe the next day, the day before, I'm going to be in an environment which is good for me. When I'm constantly in an environment which is not good for me, I can't then suddenly be extra gritty. I'm using that all up all moment. I'm using my emotional and all that energy up every single day. I'm not saying we need to change schools hugely. It's not about making huge changes to schools. I personally don't think.
I agree entirely. I think small changes can make a huge difference. And I was very fortunate in my last teaching role, we implemented something called flexible classrooms. And increasingly there is better awareness around how classrooms need to be flexible. They need, they ought to be only covering 30% of the walls, not 70% of the walls, because that's overstimulating. We need some lap desks that are on the floor, so they're physically grounded, some standing desks for people who need to move, wobble stools. Some children need to be close to the door for sort of a safety thing, perhaps sometimes facing the wall so that they feel safe. These are not difficult adjustments to make, But you only know to make those adjustments if you understand the neurodivergent experience and the level of processing that is going on constantly. And what you were saying about grit, all of their grit is being used up, all of their energy is being used up, just coping with this pretty stressful, to them, stressful environment. And you think, oh, is it really stressful? School's a fun, bubbly place. But if you watch one of those simulation videos and you recognise that they are hearing that clock ticking, they are noticing that someone's shoelace is undone, the scratching of a pencil, their brain is being pulled in 17 million different directions constantly. And that's really, really difficult to manage. So I think that awareness is important so that we can just put fairly simple adjustments in place. And if we have those that flexibility within classrooms, children can work out what works for them. And yes, sometimes it takes a bit of time for the novelty to wear off. They're wanting to try different things and they're moving around a lot. It takes a little while to settle. But once that level of flexibility is normal, then they know what environment is better for them.
And I think that kind of, if you have that environment, you know what? Most of the time in my lessons, I'm at a standing desk or I like to be on the floor, whatever it is, and that's fine. But then something happens and I have to go to that classroom where it doesn't have that. To me, if you have that environment which supports you most of the time, you can step into that environment which doesn't support you if you know it's for a short period of time. And that's the thing, it's not about making the world perfect all the time. But it's about, we will make that environment better for you, everyone, so everyone is more comfortable. Everyone, and again, if it's more comfortable, surely attendance will go up, surely exam results will go up, surely everything you want from a school will go up if everyone has better well-being and they aren't constantly just struggling to be in that school. And they will be able to go, again, some children need that warning. That class isn't available today due to whatever reason, you're going to be in there. Some children need that warning, but that's something you learn. For my daughter, she would be able to again for me, put up with it for one day. If it was a more constant thing, like that block's being rebuilt, so you're going to be in this for the rest of this term, then, okay, we do need to modify that slightly. It's not just a one-off. It's going to be a regular 3 times a week. Then, okay, cool, how can we modify it? But again, I did like, but then I'm thinking, so your experience of that lovely classroom with a different, is that in a primary setting or is that secondary?
Primary. Although that particular school went up to year 8. So we trialled it for a year with one sort of classroom in each key stage 1, key stage 2, key stage 3. And then we reviewed how successful it had been in various places. And then eventually we rolled it out across the whole school. And
so can I just go back to that point? So you trialled it, you reviewed how successful. So it wasn't on a whim.
No.
Wasn't on, everyone smiled more. You as a school would have looked at lots of factors, including probably results, attainment, attendance, and so on. I just want to clarify that. And really have at home that there was benefits across the board.
Benefits across the board. And yes, we did look at exam results. And if I'm absolutely honest, I think it took 3 years for us to get to a point where it had settled. Children knew how to use these environments sensibly, successfully, to get the best from them for them, so that they could learn and understand their best way of learning in a classroom environment. But certainly by year 3, I remember because I was the academic lead, I reported to governors. We had our best set of exam results in several years. And this was not to do with, they happen to be, a particularly bright cohort, or, we really were able to attribute this improvement in several cases. I mean, anecdotally, we were able to talk about how there was just less dysregulation in classrooms. But governors loved the fact that we could actually point to a pattern of improving academic outcomes for everybody. But I think, one of the questions that I'm asked most about is how to support dysregulated children in the classroom environment. Because so much of dysregulation is seen as oppositional. I think because if you're in a dysregulated state, you tend to be going into fight, flight, or freeze, and those tend to be seen as quite oppositional. You're either refusing to gauge, or you've got that fight response, and it's seen as oppositional. And what we need to help teachers understand is it's not oppositional. This is a nervous system response, and we need to help with regulation here. And it's the environment that is dysregulating.
I was going through lots of points in my life. There are times where it is oppositional.
Yes.
But normally follows rules not being followed fairly. So that's when I would say when it is oppositional, you will be able to literally look back over a very short period of time and there'll be something where the rules were not fairly applied and that child's feelings were just dismissed. So if you are in that situation where it's definitely oppositional, just look back, what was the trigger for that? And generally you realise that child was treated unfairly. I'm not saying every child is an angel, no, that's not what I'm saying. But I know from my experiences, the times when I was an absolute horrible child, I did choose to be, but from my point of view, the teacher chose to be the horrible person first.
Yes, I recognise that. And I think you're absolutely right. We do need to acknowledge that these are young people as well, and they are going to make poor choices sometimes, and that's absolutely fine. We just don't want to be constantly stigmatizing them and making them feel like a failure, because actually a proportion of the time, particularly for neurodivergent children, they are dysregulated. This is a nervous system response. But particularly for neurodivergent children, if they have experienced some sort of injustice, and it could have been something seemingly small, in the yard outside, in the courts or the playground outside, that's happened, and their brain can't let go of this thing. They cannot let it go, and it will be churning around and around and around. So then it's much easier for them to be tipped over then into a dysregulated state, or to start to make bad choices because, the choices that school don't want, because they can't let go of that thought.
But also, and we use the word choice. I can see in your face again, you don't want to use that word choice. But if you have, when we look at a situation, when we as adults, if you have planned to go out for dinner with a friend, you were going to go to a restaurant, you didn't book, you walk in, no tables for 2 hours. You will then go through plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. You will just go, right, should we go here, should we go here, should we here? You'll have lots of options, okay? You learnt that by being in that situation before. You learnt that through lots of experiences in your life that going, actually, there's lots of restaurants around here, and there's 3 or 4 others I like. You put all that information together, and that gives you choices. Now, when you're young, what experiences do you have? What opportunities do you have? Have you been in that situation before? No. So what are your choices?
Exactly.
There are no choices. There may be only one thing, which is actually to do that temper tantrum, to do the fight for you. Why? Because, again, it's a safety mechanism. Yeah? You've gone to, I'm not liking this. I'm kind of in this really dysregulated zone. What have I done previously that's got me out of this? That. Let's repeat that. It is technically a choice, but it's a choice of one.
Yes, exactly.
And if you can help them, not in the moment, but later on, maybe give them more options, maybe give them more things to choose from, and maybe help them when they see it going, give them one of those options.
Yeah.
If you see that child is dysregulated, give them one of the options you've discussed. They might go and go, yes, and grab it and go with that. But as soon as you're dysregulated, so many things, as somebody guests have told me, I can never remember them if I'm part, but you shut down, you go into that safety mode.
You freeze and shut down.
So I don't mind people using the word choice, but you have to understand the selection they're choosing from is extremely limited. And as it's based on prior experience, it's probably from when they're younger. So, yes, it's technically a choice, but a very limited choice of things that have worked previously.
Yeah. And I think one of the really important things that we can do as the adults around these children is help them reflect on a situation that might have exploded. Once it's passed. I think it's really important that we, and I talk about this accept, explain, reframe model, this approach, where we accept the feeling, we accept the response, we accept that emotional response. It's perfectly valid. We don't want to go brushing it under the carpet and making them feel shame or, so that they suppress it in the future. We need to learn from it. So we accept it, we explain that feeling, that response in the context of what's happened here and why might that trigger have been particularly difficult for a neurodivergent brain. Again, understanding your cognitive profile, understanding your neurotype is really important in making sense of how you respond to situations. And then we have the reframe step where we look at how that situation could have been different. And that's where you are starting to introduce these options to them. And but that's lots of conversations and it's a life experience as well. But I think there is a tendency to think that I'm uneasy with the word meltdown, but when there is a really strong emotional response to a situation, it's easy to see that as dysbehavior, as it's dysregulation, but it's a behavior choice. It's poor behavior. We just need to look beyond that, and we need to move away from seeing emotional regulation support as green is good, calm is good, and red and angry is bad. We need to be able to process and understand these emotions so that we can respond differently in the future.
I'm so glad you mentioned the colours then, because I was about to go into zones of regulation.
Oh, it's a tricky one.
And if you do it properly, I'm happy with it. But when I say do it properly, that means orange is the right zone for certain times. Yes, if something happened and they're feeling orange, that is the right response. If they were feeling green in that situation, something's probably not right. Yeah. So, it's not every child should be in green. If you're doing that, no, don't. Certain responses, should be certain things going on. You'll end up in those zones. And I was at a school recently where it had this lovely zones of regulation board. And I always find it interesting, whenever in the orange and the red, most of the feelings are negative. I feel there should be a complete balance of positive and negative. Because anyone watching we're recording, day of recording, England played Mexico last night. There are probably going to be lots of blue, orange, green and red going on with lots of people. And that would be the right response for that point. But what was interesting is underneath this, it's like how to get to green.
It's a behaviour strategy, isn't it? Not a regulation one.
But what it was is you've got a toolkit, you've got your things you can do. But one of the things I didn't see anywhere on this board is resolve the issue. How many people listening has got really angry by their partner doing something? Everyone.
Yeah.
Was it malicious? Was it that? Do you just go to green? No.
No.
Generally, you want to resolve the issue. You want it not to happen again. Now, hopefully that can be done in a fruitful, positive way, but not always. But that's the thing. You can't just go, this happened, I'm really angry about it. Oh, this is how we get back to green.
No.
Sometimes the only way to get to green is to understand how you got to orange.
Yes.
And what got you there. And actually resolving and talking it through.
And I think...
And it might be they had a certain perspective. They saw part of the picture. You have a bigger picture. It's not dismissing their view, but maybe explaining more of it.
Yes.
And understanding all of those things, they can actually going, so completely valid. You thought this happened, and I can see exactly why. So I get why you reacted. But actually, that happened because of this. And then even imagining, if I'd done this, that probably would have helped. Anything like that will get them back to green, but only because that kind of, there's a resolution.
And we know that I think all brains need a resolution to be able to put something away and then not to kind of fixate on it and worry about it. That we all really need that resolution. But I think this is why, the work that I do with parents is giving them this model where you accept, because I think validating, you said, it's a perfectly valid response. That's really important. So we validate, we explain it. So we pick it apart, we understand what's gone on, and then we reframe. And I think parents sometimes need a simple sort of 3-step process to hold on to, so that when the time comes round to having these conversations, they can sort of manage it and unpack that conversation in a really positive, productive way. And I think that learning from an experience is so important for emotional regulation, not just having a chart of colours where you've got to go for green. It's accepting and validating all experiences, so that we're not attaching shame to those perfectly valid emotions.
And again, whether you're a parent or a child or a teacher or the child, you will have different perspectives on the same situation.
Oh, yeah.
Often as parents, you have a lot more information than the child, apart from when you've just walked in and seen something go completely wrong. At that point, they have more information, and you can how you react can then spark off things like that. So we have different perspectives, and based on that, both are true. Yeah, what you saw happen. You're generally walking into a situation, generally with siblings hitting each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you look at the eldest one, thinking, well, you're bigger, I need to stop this. You blame the eldest.
Yeah.
Yes, that's quite a common one, because they're bigger. You should know better. But you have no idea what their little sibling said to them, or did, or broke, and so many ors. Yeah. When you walk in and you pick that eldest one because you know better, that they can just explode back at you for a very valid reason. You've just dived straight in. And that's the thing, when we talk about, right at the beginning, I talked about this mental health and well-being. And it is the moment we walked into that room and we've seen it, mental health, well-being, gone. Something's gone wrong, I've got to tell someone off, or whatever it is, or stopping. It was a choice they should have known better. How many times do we do things which are completely silly when we're tired?
Yeah. And I think we're all guilty, actually, of expecting more from children sometimes than we are able to give ourselves. I mean, just the school experience. If we all had to go and work in an environment where we had itchy, cheap uniform materials and told to work in silence, and that we weren't allowed to move, and that we actually had to move office every 45 minutes, and all of the, and you had to be in silence, walking along corridors, and only walk on the right-hand side. There are very good reasons for some of these things. But if we all had to operate in that environment, we would find it really difficult. Yet we just expect it of children, and we'll punish them if they can't operate in that way. We would never ask adults in the work environment to do the same.
I was just about to reflect on that. So I have a lovely office here. I spend half the day, making a cup of tea, having a chat to someone with them, making a cup of tea, and you sit at your desk, you chat to the person next to you. Someone says something, you join in that conversation. You can do all that. Yet teachers are all more or less in the same situation as the children. Lots of teachers, especially in secondary school, move class every 45 minutes as well. And in reality, when do these teachers get to talk to anyone?
No, I know.
They can literally just go. You're a teacher yourself. You know that registration to break time, you're not talking to another adult.
No.
You might have a teacher in your class, but they're generally busy. You're talking, working with the children. And then, and I know from my wife, you might be on break duty.
Yeah.
Or something's come up and you've got to phone a parent.
Yeah.
But actually, you're absorbing stress as an adult. You're taking stuff on. And you'll get to lunchtime and you're just... So teachers are always in that same situation. They have more choice over their clothing.
Yeah.
But they're also in those same environments which are distracting. Lack of air conditioning. So much less choice. So kind of they're going to be slightly more dysregulated as well.
And I think, the schools are a big sort of melting pot of dysregulation, and of course, even if you're not neurodivergent, if you're in an environment where there's all of this friction going on, people are constantly overstimulated, then other people will pick up on that. It just creates a culture of hypervigilance and trying to control yourself the whole time. It's this storing up this really difficult tension, and that tension has got to dissipate somehow. It's got to resolve somehow, and it tends to be at home for the parents. And then of course poor parents are told, well, they're fine at school, so the parents feel that they're being blamed somehow. But it's really difficult for everyone, and I see both sides as someone who's worked in education, and including senior leadership, but also as a parent to neurodivergent children. I see both sides of this, and everyone is trying their best. It is the system that is at the heart of the issue here. This standardised one size fits all system that just cannot, just by its very nature, anything standardised cannot accommodate human variation, and it doesn't work. It's just creating stress for everybody, and it does seem to be getting harder.
And there are going to be children who are just bored. They don't matter. They don't mean anything. What I'm doing today doesn't matter. And then there's an opportunity to do something silly and fun. Yeah. They're probably going to take it. They're kids.
They are probably going to take it. And especially, I think that's a natural instinct anyway. But particularly if they are suppressing their need to move, if their way of regulating is to move, then they're even more likely to do something a bit fun or a bit different, a bit novel. The ADHDers will really resonate with that, and yet there's less and less playtime in schools or break time, so they're not able to move around so much.
But even then, what might start off as a bit of harmless fun to them because they are just bored and they just, literally, I just want to smile. What can start off as an innocent thing can go wrong. But to me, how those things happen, that is, to me, is that melting pot. Well, that school culture, that relationship between individual teachers and children, teachers and children as a whole, everyone, how those relationships are, has a huge impact. And I think with everything going on, that we're at probably the worst I've ever seen it.
Yeah, that.
And I'm just seeing social media, and I'm just reading what Senko's. I read someone on LinkedIn who was absolutely ranting about, basically, you read it and it was like, they were picking on like, oh, I was only 30 seconds late. And then you literally had a whole bit, no, you were rude, you were this, you were this, you were this. And you're like, there's a lot of assumptions there. This child is obviously is slightly dysregulated. You've made a load of assumptions and you've made the situation and you've punished them. And just reading that post, I was like, you probably should step away from teaching for a little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you've already decided everything coming towards you is an attack on you. And then there are people in there who are completely agreeing, saying yes. And then there's the other hop going, you probably need to get out of the classroom.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole dysregulation, and it was just these two opposing sides. There are those who get it, and there are those who are just struggling with school. So it's not just the children who are struggling, the adults in school are struggling.
Most definitely.
We're seeing the attendance going up. I know of schools where staff have mental health time off. That's just the same as your attendance. You have teachers leaving the profession who've either just come into it and are going, or been in it for years and are leaving. All of this, to me, is linked to that well-being. And it's not a case of sticking a plaque in the front of the school. It's not a case of sticking something in the newsletter about well-being. It's got to be something the school 100% believes in and puts above everything else. Because if they put that first, everything else will follow, and that's what you found in your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that that schools have enough power to make the level of change that's required. Because if we're operating in this standardized, very high stakes, outcomes driven model, then these teachers are under tremendous pressure. Sometimes, it's performance related and they dread, exam results coming out or their next performance review. They are trying to teach increasingly dysregulated children. We are in a really difficult cycle of dysregulation and people not coping in the system. We need to go to the heart of what the system is demanding of everybody, not just, as you say, putting strategies in place. Strategies are just helping people cope, and not even that sometimes. And coping is certainly not well-being. Coping is just getting through the day in a completely dysregulated and exhausted state. I really don't know what it's going to take for more far-reaching change. And we were chatting earlier about the 2024 curriculum and assessment review, and what a great opportunity that was. And I thought that panel had such quality on it. I thought they were going to make some really brave changes, but that it didn't happen, because we are scared of stepping away from this high stakes outcome driven exam model of assessment, and it's not doing anyone any good.
One thing that is talked about in there, and the bit I am absolutely hoping for that will happen, wasn't just something they wrote, that actually, because they've done a review and said this is what needs to happen, and then other people are going away and writing this new curriculum. And we'll find out what the new curriculum looks like in spring 2027. And one of the things they said is they need to reduce the amount of content. And there are so many schools, mainly secondary, but primary as well, where schools are just trying to get through that content in time, which means time for any relationship building for anyone is just gone. The time for critical thinking, all that sort of stuff, gone. And they talked about reducing that content. And if they do maybe sort of strip out 20% of that content, that to me means we're going to see change. When that comes in 2028, we will start to see change. It will take time, a bit like you saying, as you change that school, it took 3 years for them to settle. But if they reduce that content by 20%, it is going to be a huge game changer, but it will take a long time to change. But to me, by 2032, we should be seeing much more positive outcomes in school. And if you're listening to going, why? And it's that time. If you are someone who is just always running at full speed because you're always that little bit late, you're trying to squeeze too much into your day, are you happy? Are you dysregulated? Can you talk to anyone? Are you short with people? Do you actually have time to enjoy your day? No. If I took time out of that, if I took a load of stuff out of your day and just gave you a bit more time for each thing, you're going to enjoy it a bit more. You're actually going to talk to people and realise, actually, there are some nice people around me.
Yeah.
I've actually got time to talk to them. Actually, when I talk to them, I've then realised we're doing the same thing. We can work together and we can help each other. That time is much more powerful than people realise.
Yeah.
And if they can give us that by reducing that curriculum, well-being becomes not as important, because now that teacher has time to get to know the kids. Now that teacher has a little bit of time to be the extra support.
Yeah.
Now that teacher isn't rushing that actually halfway through the lesson they're already worrying about the next lesson. They can just have that chat at the end of the lesson. There's so much more those little bits of moments of time can give that teacher, which means those children feel heard and belonging and part of that school and important, that although the exams aren't changing, actually, if they can be more regulated throughout those 2 years, they are going to perform better.
I completely agree. I think time is a huge thing. And, you know, we consider ourselves very grateful that my eldest, who's autistic, has a reduced timetable. And that was put in place because he just needed more time. I often talk about well-being, and there's this behavioural scientist called Paul Dolan who talks about well-being being this balance between pleasure and purpose. And you need to have this balance of pleasure and purpose for something to feel, you know, like there is genuine well-being there. And if we apply that to the education system, like, to what extent is there actually pleasure there? And to what extent is there actually purpose, where it's meaningful? What they're doing has a genuine purpose. They understand that. If you can get that balance right, and you can put pleasure and purpose at the forefront of education, then you're going to be on a winner. But the reality is that well-being is very much a bunch of strategies to help people cope. And it's completely the wrong way around, unfortunately.
And with that purpose, it's not the purpose is to get your GCSEs. That's fine when you're in year 10 and 11. What is the purpose for what you're doing in year 7? What's the relevance, that purpose? And again, when you're rushing through the content, you don't have that time.
No.
You don't have that time to go, so you want to be on YouTube. Cool. Okay, so how are you going to do your work at your how much money you can make? Yeah, if you get this much money for this many views, how are you going to work it all? How are you going to run your own business? How are you going to? You've got to do all that writing. So, what's your language? If you can link it to actually what you want to do, then it starts becoming, now I have a purpose for doing maths. Now I have a purpose for doing my English. Now I've got a purpose for paying attention in geography. Whatever it is, but you give that purpose. It's not purpose. It can't be 7 years away. The purpose has to be now.
Yeah.
What am I doing this for? For us, we get a lovely thing called a paycheck at the end of the month. That gives us very much purpose of what we do. Imagine not being paid for 7 years.
Oh, good grief.
But then being paid in 7 years, you would lose the will to live part way through.
Yeah, it's really, really tough. And one of the things, like you mentioned, year 7 and 8, those are difficult years potentially. You can really lose children in that year 7 and 8. I think particularly in big secondaries, you know, they look after them from a transition point of view very often. I've had a really good experience of seeing transition done very, very well. But in terms of inspiring children academically or just educationally generally, they can become lost years because there isn't this focus of exams. So we need to give them another focus, and something we did at my last school was that, you know, we still had exams for English, Maths and Science, but all of the humanities were interconnected. They didn't do exams in those subjects. They just had these online portfolios. And they built their own websites, and they were able to showcase projects that they had done, and they took real ownership over that, and that gave them a sense of purpose that really made year 7 and 8 meaningful. And I think there's something to be said for having this portfolio model throughout education, because that's something they can then show to prospective employers or apprenticeship applications. But, you know, until we're brave enough to ditch exams, that's not going to happen.
But what I like about that is you might get two children with the exact same grades, if it was graded, no idea. I'm assuming project probably were graded at some level. Whether it was shared or not, don't know. But they could be completely different. And that's what I like. It's not, this is exactly what you have to write to get 80%. It's, that got 80% and it was all about this. That got 80%, it was done completely differently. Which means each of them can look at the others and take from it and improve their own.
Exactly.
Rather than that model answer, this is how you have to write it. And basically, your grading is how close can you get that? Can you follow the rules? Can you do this? I don't care what you know. I just want you to answer it this way, which is basically what exams are. Whereas that flexibility to share that information how you want, to go deep, to show your creative side by painting or drawing, and someone else doing a video. But what is the information and what's the understanding? To me, that's what I would love we work towards.
Yep. And I absolutely, what I loved about it is that, you know, they could go and do a voice recording. You know, they might not have a podcast studio, but they can create a kind of podcast experience where they, you know, because I'm a dyslexia specialist. I taught English and then sort of moved into supporting dyslexic pupils and became a dyslexia assessor. And what I loved for my dyslexic pupils was that they were able to, those year 7s and 8s, demonstrate just how articulate and thoughtful they were by doing this sort of pretend podcast or filming a debate. And, you know, those children were able, like, they felt fulfilled, first of all, but they were able to demonstrate so much more of their quality thinking because they weren't having to write it all down. They were able just to articulate their thinking verbally. And that was so empowering for them.
Also, obviously, I like debates. I have a podcast. But it is that you're responding to that person said. So that's a whole in-the-moment skill. You can't prepare that. You have your knowledge, but you've got to listen and you've got to respond on what they've said. Rather than going, she said the word analyse. I need to say these 3 things in these 3 paragraphs and make sure I finish it with a conclusion or whatever it is. It's not that, it's actually what's the information, how's this going, is that debate flowing, am I responding to their points, or am I completely ignoring them and just saying my own thing, ignoring them?
Yeah.
All those sorts of skills, so much more powerful and so much more relevant, useful the moment you leave school.
Absolutely, and I think employers are really struggling to actually help their new employees, these young employees, unlearn a whole load of conditioning that the education system has instilled in them. You know, because to complete an exam, you have to do it on your own, in silence, and against the clock. It's the time that's the issue, not the outcome, the quality of the outcome. Whereas in the real world, you're expected to collaborate. You need to be able to work as a team. You need those interpersonal skills. And it's about a particular outcome for a client or achieving a new way of thinking rather than just, working against the clock. So employers are having to help these young people unlearn all of this conditioning that the education system has instilled in them.
But in the real world, you're able to look at the previous thing. As you're creating that, you have the previous one, so you can reference it to make sure you're not missing anything. You submit it to your boss to check it over, or you're following an approach. There's so many resources around you that collaborative, or you're kind of doing this, or if you are going to do that whole project on your own, you'll send the slides off to someone and they'll look at it and go, oh, actually, great. It's not on your own with just what's in your head and a pen. You have its ability to put all that information together, or look at all that information going, I don't know, I'm going to do it this way, I think this will be better, and having that confidence, that is what businesses want.
just being able to step back and have an opinion on the best way to approach something is a good starting point. But sadly, so much energy is wasted in memorizing, rote learning stuff just to regurgitate in an exam. And if we were able to free up some of that capacity, because we don't need to memorize everything. I don't know why there is this, I mean, of course, like things like the medical profession, they need up-to-date, correct information at their fingertips. But, you know, we can just check information. Why do we need to rote learn and memorize everything so intensely that we can spend 3 hours in an exam hall regurgitating it all in a particular formula? It doesn't make any sense.
Even just sit in the classroom, if you shout out, you're told off. If you're ADHD and you got that response, you're whereas in reality, what a boss wants is they want ideas. Any ideas, anyone?
Yeah.
Silence. Because that's what you do, you keep silent.
Because
any idea you do have is probably wrong. And that's kind of, and if you're thinking this, we're bashing education, this isn't just as opinion, this is a widely known thing. That what schools and the whole education system is creating is not what employers want. Many employers will take children from A level instead of degree so they can shape them how they want because of what's coming out. And we're hearing all of this, and universities are changing. But lower down, we're still just regurgitating. We haven't changed.
No.
And it's not helping. Now, I need to wrap this up. Aim for 45 minutes. Miles past 45 minutes. And what's interesting, those listening who still stay here, is we talked for about half an hour, 40 minutes on a similar topic before we even started podcasting. So it's been quite long, but I've really enjoyed it, and it is. And there are those who are listening to this who are just going to be having a sore neck from nodding so much. And there is those, I'm hoping, who are listening going, there might be a little tidbit that's gone, maybe. But it's just, as you said, we have so much high expectations of the children, and yet we do the same in our own relationships that they're doing in school. But we dismiss that, we forget that. We forget we're being petty with our partners because they didn't empty the dishwasher or load the dishwasher, or they loaded it really badly so I'll load it worse, or whatever it was, that you just get a bit petty and you're like, that's what some of the kids are doing.
We're all just human.
We're doing it as adults.
You know, and this is why I think your point about relationships is so important, and trying to get rid of this hierarchy, you know, teacher knows best or the system knows best, because I don't want to bash teachers. They are doing their best in a system that they can't really control. But I think, you know, that relationship between teacher and pupil and being on a level and you're in it together, you know, let's work this out together. I think that mindset and that culture of, you know, we're just humans, we're just in this together, is really important.
And that's the thing, there is this parents versus school, parent or school versus the kids and all this lot. You're like, in reality, all three should be on the exact same page for the best outcome for the child. Somehow we're not.
No.
And I don't know how we got here. We've got a couple of ideas. But we need to sit there and going, we all want the same thing. We want what's best for this child. Now, some of us might have to change our idea of what's best, not always academic. Others, we may have to go, giving them what they want is also not the best. Everyone has to balance, but we need to work together to achieve what is best for this child.
That's right. And
it comes from everyone having a positive relationship.
And that talking is really important. And the inset work that I do in schools now, I don't just train the staff. So I go in and I do staff training, but I do a parallel parent talk as well, so that we can all be on the same page, and, you know, singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were, because we do all need to pull together, because we are all on the same side. This doesn't need to be divisive at all. No,
I think, again, staff, I think, are dysregulated due to so many reasons, and I think everyone just forgets this. And something needs to happen. to give teachers that change so they can stop and start again.
Removing pressure from everybody.
We're not even stopping talking.
Sorry,
We're still going. Really enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah,
really enjoyed kind of bringing this to the front again. And as always, you're going to find Charlotte's contact details in our show notes. If you're interested in her, getting in her for training and all that sort of stuff, you'll be able to find out that, and you'll also find out more about the links to the work Charlotte does. And also, I'll see if we can get a link to your book in there as well.
That'd be great, thank you.
And as always, you can find the show notes on our website or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics, or anything else, please message us via social media or send an email to hello@thesencast.com. And the Sencast is powered by us here at B Squared, and we help schools to show the small sets of progress pupils with SEND make. And we help do this for a wide range of abilities and ages. And we have a range of frameworks to suit students from birth all the way through to 25. But we don't just cover the academic progress. We have frameworks around SEMH, executive function, personal development, communication interaction, and many, many more. And our software shows progress in a variety of ways. No matter how small that progress is, we can capture it and we can visualize that progress. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software. But for now, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Sencast. Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.